Thank you. Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to both Secretary Panetta and Secretary Pompeo, thank you for your extraordinary public service. It's good to see both of you again. Secretary Pompeo, I enjoyed visiting with you in Monterey with your son Jimmy and playing a little golf. Thank you for tolerating my bad golf with Ted Balistreri. Great to see you again. And Secretary Pompeo, thank you for, as Secretary of State, elevating this issue of the threat from China and establishing the deterrence that we need to continue to be vigilant about. I want to ask you about the recent APEC summit and your impressions of that. Following that Biden-Xi summit, the Biden administration removed the Chinese Ministry of Public Security's Institute of Forensic Science from the Commerce Entity List in exchange for greater cooperation on stopping the flow of fentanyl precursors that are being produced in the PRC. Last year, I questioned Assistant Secretary of State Crittenbrink on states' role in pressuring other agencies to delay implementation of sanctions and export controls. Secretary Pompeo, what kind of message does it send to our adversaries if the State Department intervenes to prevent the listing of PRC entities who should be sanctioned or subject to export controls?
Congressman Barr, I think that's an enormous policy mistake. I think it not only sends the wrong message, but I think the likelihood of Xi Jinping delaying precursors for fentanyl moving into our country is precisely zero as a result of that action. He has been determined to continue to poison our children here at home, and I don't think any action taken by the United States Department of State to sort of relieve them of any penalties, restrictions, prohibitions is likely to change his direction on that.
And just for context, this ministry that was removed from the Commerce Entity List, this is an instrumentality of the CCP that has engaged in horrendous genetic testing of Uyghurs and human rights violations. Secretary Panetta, you noted in your testimony that our adversaries routinely weaponize economic tools of market access and trade dependencies, such as fossil fuels from Russia and critical minerals from China. Last week, it was announced that in an effort to combat climate change, the Biden administration would be halting LNG exports. This administration, however, has extended 8 times a Treasury General license allowing for transactions involving Russian energy exports, including oil, to be exempt from U.S. sanctions. Do either of these actions, the action to block LNG exports to our allies in Eastern Europe, or the action to provide a general license to our sanctions regime against Putin, do either of those actions help us cut off funds from Moscow?
I don't know whether, and I hope they haven't, the administration has made a final decision with regards to LNG. I know the president has postponed that issue and is looking at some of the issues related to regulations, but I think it is very important to be able to provide that kind of fuel to our allies, for goodness sakes. Because they've joined with the United States, they have lost the ability to have to rely on Russian energy. That's a good thing. And we ought to be providing the support necessary in order to give them the ability to be independent of that source of energy. So I hope that the administration moves forward with the LNG and allows that fuel from the United States to be able to go to our allies.
Thank you. I agree with that. I think exporting energy, producing energy is a geopolitical tool, and it's a grave mistake to not recognize that. But in addition, I want to talk a little bit about, as a member of the Financial Services Committee with oversight over Treasury, the Treasury's Department's inexplicable decision to provide a license to Russian banks to allow them to process energy transactions. And I've spoken with Secretary Yellen about this. I've spoken to Wally Adeyemo. These are great public servants who are trying to do right with this oil price cap regime. But the problem is the oil price cap is not working. Russian crude is trading above the cap and it's not enforceable. To me, what would make more sense is to sanction dirty, polluting Russian energy and produce more American energy to help our allies. Can either of you speak to that?
I think you made a very good point, and that's what we should be doing.
Well, I thank the gentlemen for their testimony and their service. And once again, Secretary Pompeo, thank you especially, or Secretary Panetta, thank you especially for your incredible work with the intelligence community in the lead up to the Abbottabad mission. That was some great patriotic work, and this country is eternally indebted to your leadership. I yield back.